So Damian, Eight Rivers is a developer of low carbon solutions. Why did you guys choose the AC to be part of the portfolio?
We were looking at direct air capture for a long time back when, the carbon engineerings and Inventuses of the worlds were, and the Climeworkses were developing their solutions, and they had reached out to us a lot to talk about commercialization of what is large-scale industrial technology, which is at that time was difficult even for anybody to really develop because VC capital really wasn't motivated. But what we had found was there were a lot of large industrials that were becoming interested in reducing their emissions or offsetting their emissions. And then when we really started to see the market take hold, given all the other low carbon solutions that we had developed, we decided to throw our hat in the ring with a solution called Calcite. We looked to drive the CapEx and OpEx as far down as possible and really drive technical simplicity through the process. But because we are squarely in this space and have been for a decade and a half, we just saw this as a natural fit to what we were doing anyways.
Damian, Calcite, you guys are developing the first pilot. How did you choose the scale of this pilot and what are the main challenges?
Yeah, so a lot of the DAC systems that you see, they have the air moving fans on the top, and you can almost do them in a modular manner. So the size of this first one was the first module, and then you can just repeat those modules over and over again to scale the amount of CO2 you want to capture out of the air. So that was the thought process around the size of the pilot. From there, we're looking at about 5,000 tons with that unit, and then we'll move to 50,000, and then the goal is, 500,000 to 1 million tons of capture.
Do you have a timeline in mind or goal?
Yeah. So we're starting feed. We've on the first one now. We're looking at 50,000 tons in 28. And then call it 2032, looking at 500,000. So certainly behind the guys at 1.5, but they've really broken open the market, I think, and really started to create a market, which I think from Eight Rivers' perspective, and I think a lot of people around the world, I think they really appreciate the vision that Oxy and 1.5 have taken on this.
Yeah. So talking about this technology, there is a lot of talk about the energy requirements for the AC. It's a lot of energy is required to capture CO2 because of low concentrations. And then at the same time, we need to scale up this technology significantly. So are energy requirements or energy in general one of the bottlenecks for the deployment and the growth of this technology? Open to all of you guys.
Yeah, I think, when you look at the amount of electricity that any of these systems will end up consuming, even those that leverage thermal energy as well for regeneration. On the electrical side, we certainly have a limitation, I would say, here in the US and even across supply chains for systems that can produce reliable, low-cost electricity. So that really needs to scale significantly. And the other thing that I've been wrestling with in my head is a lot of the off-takers for these carbon removal credits are the big tech companies, and they're about to hyperscale their data centers. And so you have this dual demand now, effectively coming from a single industry, both for carbon removal as well as for AI. And so how we overcome that, I'm not quite sure. We heard some groups from Mitsubishi and Siemens and Baker Hughes all across this week. They all touched on the fact that there are supply chain constraints. I think if you're looking for a 400 megawatt turbine right now, just gas breathing, natural gas combined cycle thing, you're looking at 2028, 2029 if you place the order today. And then you've got the transmission infrastructure, the transformers and things that you need between, even if you're behind the meter, you're still going to need that. And so I do think that is a potential limitation, but I don't think it's, you look at 1.5, it's not a limitation of will. And so we're just going to have to deal with those constraints and work through them. And you deploy as fast as you can.
What is the business case for the AC?
Well, I think, when I kind of boil down Microsoft, Amazon, and the big tech companies that are purchasing these removals, I ask myself, am I going to stop ordering packages to my doorstep if they don't remove their historic emissions? And the answer for me is absolutely not. And then I ask, am I going to stop using Excel if Microsoft doesn't remove their emissions? Nope. And so on and so forth. And so for them, what I think the business case is to retain their workforce and remain competitive. Because if you have Amazon removing more emissions and having better kind of ESG profile than Microsoft, that talent moves. So how do you retain your talent? So I think that's a core driver in my thesis, because I can't really work out what the other core drivers are other than wanting to be good stewards of the environment. The other thing is I think they do see that they're about to scale a tremendous amount of demand for power. And to get reliable power right now is probably going to come from emitting assets if they're going to scale by 2030 the way they say they're planning to. So there's also that, where if you're going to create so many more emissions, it'd be good if you were already developing a market to remove those emissions as well.
Do you guys think that these voluntary purchases are a sustainable model for the AC?
One of the things we like to look at is there opportunity for cogeneration? So can your DAC plant do something else other than, or produce another product other than just direct air capture? There are chemical processes where people fight to keep CO2 out of the chemical process because it'll be readily absorbed. So that's an opportunity. I think the heat from certain DAC technologies, ours especially, has value in the generation of steam. Can you sell that steam? Doing those types of things, and that's one of the reasons I really like BECCS right now is, one, a portion of your OPEX for the actual capture has been covered. Two, you then remove permanently, measurably. I call BECCS more of a combination of bio-based with mechanical, because you can measure every molecule of CO2 and there's only one place it came from. And then permanently store it and produce another revenue stream in electricity, and in fact negative emissions electricity. And that's another thing that 8 Rivers is developing at pace right now, is to be able to produce negative emissions electricity while doing carbon removal. But I think there are lots of opportunities like that. When we look at our Calcite technology, we end up producing a ground calcium carbonate, which is quite valuable for the industry. And it turns out that our ground calcium carbonate that comes out of that system is also carbon negative because we've cycled it 2 or 3 times. So we think that's an advantage in the long run as well. But that cogeneration opportunity, I think, is maybe a next phase that we'll start to see in the direct air capture space as people get more creative.
How big is the opportunity for DAC to provide CO2 as a feedstock in utilization? Is it CO2 utilization more of a demand driver or sequestration? How do you guys see it?
I mean, today it's sequestration, right? Long term, so I'm a chemist by training, I've always really liked the idea of converting CO2 to value-added products. I've looked at, one of the things I looked at right away in the first Carbon X Prize that started back in 2016 was, what is the next best thing other than sequestration or EOR? And by the way, I think that's a very viable option too. Once you do the math, I think we really need to settle down and get pragmatic on how to value CO2 through that mechanism. But anyways, if you take CO2 to value-added products, you convert ethane to ethylene. So I said, what are the largest produced chemicals today in the world? Ethylene is second only to ammonia. Can you produce ethylene from ethane using CO2 as a soft oxidant to do oxidative dehydrogenation? The answer is yes. That technology needs to advance, but that's a massive consumer of CO2 in the long run. But what I found is second to, say, sequestration and EOR was cementitious material. So if you can cure concrete as you pour it, there's commercial technology out there called Carbon Cure that can inject CO2 as you pour concrete. That's a very significant potential consumer at scale. So I think that there are opportunities on the horizon, and as the costs come down for capturing CO2, not only from the air, but point sources as well, I think what we'll start to see is organizations start to consume that. Now, when I was an undergrad and was going to grad school, my PIs asked me what I wanted to study, and it was CO2 reduction. And they said, don't do that, it's really hard. And it is, because you're in the thermodynamic well, right? Where did you get all the energy to make the CO2? It takes just as much to get it out, if not more. But I do think it's a creative and exciting opportunity. And DAC gives you a clean source of CO2 to then develop additional feedstocks. And then you see, right, I forgot, sustainable aviation fuels and things like this that are happening, which is effectively like recycling your plastic bottle. So why not get on board with that?
So it sounds like, you know, DAC has multiple options to provide value, right? Sequestration, you can get climate benefit or CO2 utilization. So it's exciting, but we still see very few buyers in the market. What is the main challenge for these buyers? Is it cost to get into the market? We need to just, is the, you know, bringing costs down that is going to open the market for more buyers? Or what is it?
I mean, obviously you always want to see more buyers in a market, but I mean, if you think about when this industry started and where it's already at and the number that you've seen sign up for Stratos, it's actually pretty incredible. The number of industries that are entering this space. So I think, you know, now that this leadership's been taken by Oxy in doing this, I think you'll see a lot more people come to the table. And they're going to have a significant first mover advantage for sure. But that's also exciting, and they should, because they took the visionary stance and actually went out and built the thing instead of talking about all the reasons and problems and things like this. So I don't know. I think, yes, we want more faster, but I mean, let's give credit where credit's due on how many have already been brought to the table for this.